Yeah, you know what I mean. So that's spoken to you. Hi, Thomas. Okay. So I just wanted to spend 5 minutes because I know Clayton's in hospital, and he's been very good at keeping residents up to speed with the Street Support initiative at the University of Reading. And he's always been transparent and open with us and trying to help us understand what the remit is. But when we meet, obviously it's a bit sketchy. He says, you know, I don't have all the information to hand, etc. So I sent in some questions that I think are reasonable questions about the circuits that you do, the times, the locations that you go to, because what we're finding is that it hasn't improved, and this isn't a reflection on Provide not doing a good job. This is us trying, as residents, trying to get to the bottom of why the University of Reading are telling us that it is successful when clearly for 7 months we've still had the problem. Now I appreciate that the pilot started in April and is due to run until the next summer, but given that we've highlighted again and again as residents the hotspots, we're picking up litter from the floor, booze bottles and cans, and on the university website it says that Provide Security recycle the leftover bottles. So as residents, we would like to understand why the university feel that they can tell us something which is unsubstantiated, whereas we as residents are living it 5 days a week, night and morning, because it carries on till like 4 a.m. And we just want the truth, basically. We want to understand why the university feel that they can tell us something that is ultimately not what is happening. Because I've spoken to your street wardens outside and asked them, do you recycle the leftover bottles and cans? And they said no. And I said, well, on the university website it says that you do.
Then you should be asking university.
I will. Well, the reason I asked the street warden was because I wanted to hear it from the street wardens, because the university will come back to me and say things like, they use very fluffy language. They don't give statistics, they don't give evidence or fact-based responses. They just say things like, we're doing all we can. We have very positive feedback. And when we ask from whom, you know, from residents. Well, we're residents and we're not giving you good feedback. So do you appreciate where we're coming from as residents?
We have, as a company, we have tried our best, even though you are absolutely out of our remit. First, we are not supposed to answer you as residents, because we should be just going to client. And if you have any issue...
Yeah, your contract is with the University of Reading. They pay you money, right?
So we are not liable to
But Clayton is a gentleman, and he appreciates that ultimately the role that he's been asked to perform is to... The end customer really is the residential community.
Unfortunately, fortunately,
you know,
if residents has got any problem, they should be going to either council.
Oh yeah, don't worry.
Yeah,
we're the police, the council,
or
everybody.
University.
Yeah.
Because if you are asking us or asking me or our company as company, Clayton has tried, our management team has tried their best, but we have got limited. Per se, I'll give you a very small. Don't take my words as I'm actually giving you something like you actually make it as evidence. Of course, whatever is the agreement with you guys and university, we don't know.
Well, there isn't one, is there?
Yeah.
Because that's part of the challenge. It's not tri-party agreement. It's us being inflicted upon by something that the university have only started making a show of doing something because the backlash from the residential community has been strong. This is coming from several areas, as you know, because you patrol more than just one area around the campus, right? Or not even the campus, around the residential streets.
Yeah.
So this has happened because there is a marked increase in the problems, in the antisocial behaviour. It's now going into criminal. because there's public indecency, indecent exposure, and breach of the peace, which becomes a police matter.
Yeah.
Okay, so we as residents are obviously doing all we can within our power, but at the end of the day, this is happening to us. And we have to start being proactive, because the university and yourselves have the agreement, but nobody has come to us and said, let's have a tri-party, open and transparent. What do you need to be successful,
Jessica,
and what do
you
we
need to
want?
understand
They've
that
just done it with you.
We have nothing to do with residents. So first of all, we are not answerable.
Well, actually, that's not necessarily true. You don't have anything to do with us from a contractual perspective.
Yeah.
I agree. But in terms of the outcome and the goals,
Yeah.
the remit is to try and sustain an element of peace and lack of disturbance in a residential community, right? So the end goal is to perform that. You're not there just to deal with these students regardless of the situation. You're only there because of what's happening in the residential community, okay? So from a contractual perspective, we don't have any
Clearly we are there
any
just for university
agreement.
concerns. We have nothing to do with residential problem. If there is some, we are not supposed to involve
Yeah, but
in that.
what I'm trying to demonstrate is that the flow of this is residential university U. Do you see what I mean? The only reason you're employed is because the residents have started saying enough, this is out of order, right? So the end goal should be to bring peace back to a neighbourhood, right? That's not too much to ask, is it? I mean, would you like 7 months of broken sleep, people urinating on the streets, vomiting, shouting, screaming,
And
swearing?
The problem is that we are not there on street patrol. We are there specifically just for the students of university. If it's a random guy who is doing all that on a street, we're not gonna actually handle that person, because that's then police. You take it to council, they
But
handle it, or send police over
I've
there.
been,
We have nothing to do with general public. We're not gonna stop general public to do anything over there. We won't be getting involved into pub situations.
no, that's
or
not where
anything
that's
related
not
to
what
it.
I'm saying, is it? Because the areas that you're patrolling
Yeah.
are 99% student hotspots.
Yeah.
Either the bus stop when they're all going into town because there's clubbing on, and that usually happens on a Monday, Wednesday, and I can't remember the other day, Thursday. But at the moment, it happens Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It pretty much happens 5 nights a week, you know. And then when you've got Halloween and that, even more at the weekend.
Yeah.
So you're there specifically for the hotspots where the students are causing disturbances, because you're not trying to quieten down the other people waiting at the bus stop, because actually they're just sitting there waiting like normal members of the public. They're not the problem, right? You're trying to maintain a level of decency with what is a mob situation. You know, you've got
Jessica,
80 students.
Jessica, the thing is that you are calling us. First, we are not actually. If you have any problems, you should be going to university or council.
Well, we do go to them, don't
Yes,
worry.
then, if they have
We do
any
go to
issues,
the
if they have any
university.
issues, they'll come to us and we'll look into it.
But
Because we are
the
actually
reason
working
we've come
under
to you,
our remits. Whatever they asked us to work, we are working it. I'm not saying that what's happening behind the screen, we are not aware of it. If they're telling you guys a different story, that's totally different ball game. Because if you go back,
your street patrol people have said to me that when you first started, there was communication with the university. Now there's no contact. I find that unusual.
like us directly with university.
I think, well, my understanding and what the university have told us in emails is that your street support team can contact the university security services
Yes.
for additional support,
Yes.
okay? Now, one of your street wardens on an evening where it was particularly loud and antisocial said that there is no contact from them at all. They don't get in touch, they don't come back to them.
That's where, Jessica, if you're gonna keep talking to every single person, even the wardens, they have got limited information.
But they're
You
on
are
the,
going
they're
to the
there
ground
on the
floor.
night.
If you have a problem, you
They're
have to
there
talk
on the
to.
night, aren't they? They're witnessing. You're sitting in your behind your desk.
Yeah.
You're not seeing it or living it. The residents are living it
If
day
you have
and
the
night.
issues, Jessica, what I'm trying to say is, if you have issues, you have to take it. You have to go to university to actually address it to them, or council, where we sit as company, including wardens or whoever in our company, we have got very limited remit to answer or to work on.
So
if
the
general
most
public
we're
starts coming out,
asking, the most we're asking, which I think you'll find isn't particularly onerous questions, are what nights of the week, what's the circuit, and how often do you do it? Because we're finding that there are periods, long periods, where there isn't any presence, for want of a better word.
if you,
So
you should be complaining to them that you don't have any presence of security,
but
not asking us.
But we do, but they come back to us and say that's not the case. But
Then
we've
just
seen
go
it with
to
our
talk to
own
them.
eyes. But you're the key. You're the missing link.
Jessica, we are
You're
not
the one who
supposed
can
to answer
say.
you any of the questions which you asked us, because we are not relevant by any means, or we are not liable by any means to answer you anything. If you have any issues, please do talk to university. If they are not actually giving you accurate, as you said, I'm not saying that. If you are not actually happy with what they are telling you, then you should be talking to council or call police, because we have got little restricted limit. And if they call us for say one day, if they ask us 2 people to come and work there, we'll be giving them 2 people. But then, on the other hand, if you're expecting 20 people to be working, then it's university and you or council.
But the thing, what you have to, I appreciate what you're saying. It all makes sense, right? I understand. I work day in, day out. I work in corporate and I work with contracts and agreements. And I understand that you have a contractual agreement with the university to perform a service, right?
Yeah.
When you get to a situation where people are sharing out or misinforming the public, then it does become a public concern, because we need to understand what is the reality versus what the university are telling us, which doesn't always stack up, you know, because A, we've seen it visually, B, we hear it, and C, we've heard it. So we have 3 fact-based, you know, ways of understanding that actually what the university is telling us has got holes in it, right? Now, what I would have appreciated maybe many moons ago is for the courtesy of Macram to actually ring me back if he was the guy who's in charge of the contract, and to say what you've said to me. I'm really sorry, I understand your situation, but I'm not able to give you any information because I'm contractually bound with the University of Reading. That would have been a much nicer and more professional answer than saying somebody will get back to you, somebody will get back to you, somebody will get back to you, causing frustration and anger, which isn't directed personally, so don't take it personally. But do you appreciate where I'm coming from? If somebody had come back and said, I can't because of X, Y and Z, then as residents we would go back and say, okay, we have a brick wall here because of the contract. What's our other options, you know? And maybe that could have been getting in a room together with everybody and saying, actually, what we need here is some transparency and some tri-party understanding, and get everybody together to discuss it. And then you would have been more open. But Clayton, if he's willing to speak to residents, then that gives a bit of, I don't want to say it misleads us, but he was doing the right thing, and I appreciate what he was doing. I appreciate it very much. You know, he comes at it not purely from a professional perspective, but also from a citizen, you know, who understands that these things happen.
Help him. Don't take me wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize before. But Clayton normally helps it. He actually gives it his best. But then it becomes obligation. People start ignoring. You are calling him middle of night. He has nothing to do with that situation. But we are trying to.
Well, the Vice Chancellor's not going to get out of bed. He's outsourced it to you guys, hasn't he?
His problem.
He's not made it his problem anymore.
we are not actually, you didn't get it, that we have nothing to answer to anyone else. What Clayton said was totally out of courtesy. It has nothing.
So how are we
obligation.
measuring, how are we want to understand as residents how success is being measured, because if you are obliged under your contract to not speak to residents, okay,
Yes. If you have
and the
problems, you
university,
have to talk to
the university won't speak to the residents because what they can do is just turn a blind eye to it because it's bad press,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
We, as the victims, because that's what it's turning
Then you
into,
take up to council that they're not actually doing
the
anything
council are
about it.
aware of this, and so are Thames Valley Police.
So you are.
But you know what
both
everybody
the owners
says,
of it are
but-
taking it. Okay, we don't care.
But
so you are
everybody,
actually coming up to
no,
us
no, you're all
pushing
getting,
us.
don't worry, you're all getting the same questions. It isn't that you've been singled out. What we were trying to do is cooperate more with Provide Security
We
to
don't
understand.
Have to. You don't need. You have to understand this.
But that's the point, isn't
Even
it?
if they- even if
Everybody
if
is
they
saying we don't have to do anything. So what is the whole point of this
you have
initiative
to-
in the first place?
You have issues with university, yes? University students. We are not students.
I didn't say you were.
No, I'm just trying to explain it to you. That we are not part of students. We are there to do a specific job, which we are probably doing it rightly. That's why university is keeping us. If you have got any more concerns, which is related to all the other bits, which we are probably not aware of, then you should be taking it to university. Because the more you'll ask us, we have nothing to do. It's like a contractor is working on a road, and you
Yeah.
all go and ask a contractor, okay, what's your remit? He's gonna say, well, I'm doing my job. If you have issues, you take it
Yeah,
up to
but if
the relevant person.
if that person who has outsourced the job to the contractor has said your job is to fill those holes,
Yeah.
right? And then I come along and I see that those holes aren't filled.
Yes.
I have a right to speak up and say,
No, I'm
well,
sorry.
you haven't filled the holes properly.
I'm
Now the trouble
really sorry,
is, bear
no,
with
because
me, what
we
you
cannot
what the
answer every
missing
single
no,
person.
but what you're missing here is, and I mean I don't mean the point, I mean the bit that you guys don't see, not just you, the university, is that when it happens, when it all happens, it happens from 11 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning. Nobody else is awake at that time because the university aren't proactively saying we'll come and see what's going on. So they're not qualifying it and quantifying it because they're not seeing it.
So is that our
You
fault?
don't, no, I haven't finished. You're not, you're doing your job, whatever the remit, whatever the £25,000 a term is, because they've told us how much they pay. Whatever-
Let's say that much, yeah.
Oh, well that's interesting because we've been told they pay
That's
£25,000
what I'm
a
saying.
term.
What they are telling you, we are not aware of. Right? What we have got literally out of all this situation, I've got literally a very small portion, probably 1%
how
of
does
liability.
somebody-
But you are not.
How
sorry.
does somebody
The
get you?
99% liability is from someone else, and 1% people are actually taking all the burden on their shoulder.
But
because
we
have to
are.
answer to
You're
everything.
lucky. You don't have to. You don't have to spend pretty much 5 nights a week with the swearing and the chanting and the vomiting and the urinating where we live, right? The only people who are
But then
experiencing
you
that,
have paid that money.
I haven't paid
You-
any
no,
money.
well, you live around that area.
Yeah.
You are paying.
I pay my council tax.
Yes, your council tax. So council is liable for that, or university is liable for that. Being contractors, we are not liable for anything over there. Whatever we have done was out of courtesy.
Yeah.
I would have said
No,
that
I
Clayton.
appreciate. Look,
uh,
I've always said from the beginning that
But
I
now
don't
we are
have.
paying the price.
You're not paying any price. You're
Because
getting
we have
paid to do a
answer-
job.
No, we are not getting paid to actually entertain residents of over there because
Well,
we
we're
have got-
we're being entertained enough nights by the students. You don't
Well,
need to
that's your-
entertain us.
Right, because if I'm having personal problem, I should start blaming every single person around them.
It's not a personal problem. It's an antisocial problem.
So, but I'm not police. I'm not council.
No, I didn't say you were. I've never said you were.
So because you are going around, and that's what I'm saying, that it has nothing to do
No,
with
what
our limit.
I appreciate where you're coming from totally, And like I said, if from the very beginning someone had had the courtesy to say, I can't speak to you.
Unfortunately, I think we have paid enough for Clayton's courtesy that we are still answering that. If Clayton would have straight away said then and there,
Yeah, maybe
it has
from the very
nothing-
beginning he shouldn't have had any interaction.
Yes, he would
It's
have
not for
straight away
me to
said-
say. I've always
Yeah.
been appreciative of it, and I've always been pro some action being taken, whether it's through a street warden initiative or whatever. The fact of the matter is we've got to a point now where the results aren't visible, and the only people that are experiencing it, the lack of results, is the neighbourhood, right? So clearly, I agree, we do go back to the university and say, this isn't working. Whatever it is that you're doing and you're telling us, it doesn't seem to be working. Now, it's on their conscience, right, whether they're telling us the truth or otherwise. I'm not
And
I'm
then
not
just
daft
to
to not
give
understand
you,
that.
Just to give you a bit
But
more
your
emphasize on our
reputation may be tarnished inadvertently because what they're saying you're doing, and please go on the university website, the community section, where it says you guys are recycling leftover bottles. They are tarnishing your reputation because apparently your remit is this and this.
Let me just add on one more thing.
And that's factual, it's on the website.
There is university own site security as well, which stays 24/7.
You're only on campus.
No, what I'm saying is, if they have any department which deals with that, that's totally different. So we cannot answer on their behalf. Our job and our limitation is probably, I'm just giving you example. If for say one night they asked us for 5 hours, just patrol these two
Yeah.
streets and don't care about all the rest of XYZ streets. I'm just giving you examples, so
Yeah.
at least you get my point where I'm coming from. These two guys have been asked to stay, just keep patrolling on this, to measure if any student activity is going beyond their limits or whatever they have been asked on that specific day.
Yeah.
That's your job. Now, all the rest of the streets are definitely getting affected. I'm not saying not.
Yeah, of course.
But our limit is, on the other hand, if they have said it to council, residents, or whoever, that we are covering all these streets, then we are not aware of it. Our limitation, what I'm trying to say is, those 5 hours, those two people,
Yeah.
and the job.
And we've asked for that information. We've just said, out of courtesy, what are the areas that you're monitoring at what times?
I hope you
Because what
understand
we can
cannot-
do,
we cannot
but yeah,
help
but what
you
we
that,
can do
yeah.
is input into that and to say, well, actually, the trigger times are these, and you're not there, so maybe put them there and help them. But what we get back is, it's successful, it's working well.
Then
And
it's
you know,
university, yeah.
you've said the word that captures both our situations in this, awareness. We're not aware. We don't
Mhm.
know things
And
yet.
we only are aware
Yet
of only
the-
1% of all
Yeah.
this, and then 90% is you guys, university and council, who has that, because whatever has been designed was between university security and university management and council.
Yeah.
They have agreed
They've
whatever
not
is
taken
happening.
into consideration the actual
Then here you
public
go.
that they need
Yeah.
to speak to, who are feeding in on a daily basis. For the past 7 months, we've highlighted a grave situation, and if it was me, and I was the community relations officer, I would be saying, okay, this is clearly a really bad hotspot. We need to do something, right? Because it's not working. But that isn't happening. So the questions I'm asking myself are, why? Is there no appetite to do anything because you don't want to discipline students because they bring in £9,000 a year, and so it's a commercial argument?
Yeah.
Or do you, or what? I'm trying, do you know what I mean? These are rhetorical questions. I'm not asking you these questions. But, you know, as somebody with a little bit of common sense would ask themselves, why, if you're saying every night, not just me, the other residents, this is happening here, this is happening here, this is happening here, it's clearly not a one-off. why would you, University of Reading, academia, great brains, not be looking at your plan and your pilot and saying, okay, we need to change things? That would be common sense, right?
Well, that's the only thing. You know all the answers.
There
but
is
unfortunately, we have nothing
so
to
much
do.
that's being not shared or not, you know,
Well,
the lack of awareness is
it's out of our boundaries.
palpable.
All your questions, most of your questions are out of our boundaries, or out of our, even though probably we are not even aware of those, as that,
Yeah.
that we are part of it. So
But that's what's worrying, right? Because we are feeding back to the university in the good faith that they will feed back to Provide and say, okay, the feedback we've had from 60% of this area is that it gets loud between 11 and 1. So let's focus here because the other areas have shown improvement, you know? But we're not getting that. And we're not getting a kind of... if it's a pilot, you would have phases and you would have milestones and you would do things where you go, okay, that hasn't worked, let's change it. These are the very straightforward questions that we ask the university. But all we get are really, really, really fluffy answers like, it's working well. But that is such a broad statement.
then I'll say, like, I think then you have to actually go next level to actually take it further up rather than coming down to us.
You're not down, you're sideways.
We are only.
You're
my only
you're
thing
one
is
of the
that
links.
We are only less than 1% of all the situation, if we consider answerable. We have got just limited remit.
Yeah,
as I
but
said.
do you know what they've done though is they've created almost like you're the solution.
Did they give you
And
the
you're
number?
not.
Okay, just an example. Did they actually give you the number and contact details to actually go and talk to Provide?
The community relations officer told me that they had employed Provide Security to
Yes.
do the street warden initiative. Yeah.
Yes. But then that's her job to actually answer it, not us to answer that. Because tomorrow, if they have any issues, they'll actually come to us.
Oh yeah, but they've offered,
If
like the community relations officer has offered to have a meeting with all three of us, you know, with Clayton, herself and the residents. It's just never transpired. That's another thing. It's
That's
like,
the thing
let's
is-
have a meeting, and then it never happens.
So if they're not gonna make any decision on that, then how can we actually take anything? Like if I'm being honest, we are actually suffering because of that, because we have to answer. But don't take it wrong. Don't
No,
take
no.
it personally. But a resident is
None
coming
of
now
this is
and
personal.
basically it's
Don't
like,
get me wrong. This isn't directed at you or you, anything like that. This is people. This is about people that have
But you
that
need to
are.
understand that we are actually getting a call at 11 in the evening to answer a person that we are not supposed to,
Oh, don't worry. But the Reading Security Services, the campers get it. But do you know what their answer is? They're camp on site only, and the Street Warden Initiative is there to do that. So do you understand how everybody is? Yeah, but do you understand how everybody? The point I was making earlier about your reputation being tarnished a bit is because the answers are all provider dealing with it. So you are becoming. I don't want to use the word scapegoat because it's quite a strong term, but in a way it's being pushed out to you, and it's creating it's a distraction for the university as to what's really happening, because then what the residents will do is go, oh, it's Provide that aren't being successful, it's Provide that aren't doing their job properly, when in actual fact it's the university.
If we are that big in that picture, definitely they wouldn't have actually used our name as scapegoat, or we would have actually jumped out of our skin to do something about it.
But if
I think that job, out of all the jobs what we are doing, is literally not even out of 100, it's not even 1%. I said it like 10 times as well. Why would I actually bother about 1% that it's going to actually affect my reputation, even though that's just an additional thing which we are doing apart from the other jobs which university itself is doing it. Nobody's
I
blaming
don't
it.
understand
and
what
out
you
of-
mean by the other 1% of the other jobs.
Well, in university and relevant to all the security. it's
Oh, you
only-
do other stuff for the university?
Yes, but.
And
like,
so this is
sorry.
just like a little extra on the side that you're doing?
Yeah, because only one person named Jessica, I think that's your name.
Yeah.
Jessica, one person is coming up as resident and she's literally calling us every day and night. And we have to answer her.
I've called you
again,
once.
because for her, because she's annoyed that she can't sleep, but she's not considering that the other human that I'm calling or talking to, they have said it quite clearly. We cannot help you by any means. It's not in our hands, unfortunately.
But then
I'm
the
sorry.
training you should give to your staff is to politely say, I'm sorry, I
I
can't.
told him that you made a wrong decision by helping her because you listened to her. Now she's actually taking it further. That's what even
But the
though
intention was always from a purely, placatory way, just to understand what are the unknowns, and the lack of awareness is so palpable. It's worrying because time and time again, the response we get. So if the residents, I'll give you an example, right, about your point that you're only 1% of something and you're not really, in
We're
the
not
grand
the
scheme of
decision
things,
making,
it's the
yes.
university. I agree, but if the residents email and say again, the response we get typically is the street warden initiative is working well, or the street wardens were out last night. But, so they're hiding behind this.
so that means they have answered it for us.
But they're not
Now, we
there,
doing
are
our
they?
job. Well, Jessica, if they expect
They're not
us to do-
physically there. Not you guys. You guys are doing your job. I've never said you're not doing your job. The point is, how can the university, and this isn't a question that you can answer, obviously, how can the university say to the residents that the street warden scheme is working well when they're not standing there at 11, 11:30, 12, 12:31, 1:32, 2:33, 3:30, 4 a.m. with what's going on? Do you see what I mean? They're out of touch with actually what's happening. Not your fault,
Then why am I answering it?
because you're a decent human being.
That is the problem. That now we are suffering. I'm sorry.
We're suffering as well, right?
No, but then you have to take it to them because.
The only person
Jessica,
who's sleeping well in
unfortunately,
his bed is the
we
Vice
don't-
Chancellor.
Well, then you actually talk to them because you said it to him because he helped you, or Clayton helped you. Now because we actually listened to you and we helped you, then now we are actually answerable because you are in our office.
No,
sitting
you're
here.
not answerable. The only thing that we wanted to understand was who can give us some real feedback as to what the actual remit is.
Well,
And you're telling us you can't because you're bound by agreement.
we are at the
The
bottom
university are
layer.
telling us something else.
They're
and the
telling
only
you
per-
that we are bounded.
The only people that know what's going on are the residents, because we keep a log of what's
If
happening.
you're not getting anything out of it, then you raise it up to either police or council.
We have.
University. So
we
if
have.
you have done it, then wait for it because then they're gonna get the answer somehow. We cannot. So then you have to
Isn't
realize
it?
that on our end, we cannot do too much because we have to stop our work or in the middle of night wake up and answer your call.
Why do you
Well,
even
like-
have access to a 24-hour? Is it 24 hours?
That's
service?
for our jobs, like for our other jobs which are 24-hour and which are relevant, we are answerable
Your
to that.
details are available on the website.
On university
I don't have
website.
his personal phone number because he's given it to me. Well, I rang you, but how
Yeah,
did
but-
I get in touch with you on the landline?
Yes.
And then
because
you
it was
called
after
me.
hours call.
Yeah, and then you called me.
But that's
So
not-
to be fair, if that rang out and rang out and rang out, then I would have just put the phone down eventually. But someone did pick up. You can't
No,
blame
because-
me for that.
but that's the
What I'm
thing.
saying is we have got like
Other
like,
sites
I
as
look
well.
after whole South London and South, so I've got a lot might be a client is calling me that we have a building on fire.
Yeah, but they wouldn't ring the landline. I didn't expect an office
because
number to
sometimes
even be
I-
open.
No, because
Because you're
that-
half 5, right?
there are 5 numbers which actually goes through and then it escalates. So if it's been missed by any means, by any chance from me, the control actually calls it automatically to all our mobile numbers.
Yeah.
So if I missed it for any means, then he's gonna get it, he's gonna get it, he's gonna get it,
Well, it's a
then
good
he's gonna get
system.
it. Yeah, so eventually someone will
But you
answer
are
it.
prone to general public being able to use it because it's on your website, right?
It's
whereas-
on our website
yeah.
for our jobs,
Yeah.
not for general queries.
Well, no, anything you put out on, I'm sorry, but if you've got something on a website that says call us on this number,
Because that is
and then it
the-
says office hours 10 till 5:30, the assumption you make as a member of the public is that you only pick up the phone between 10 and, you
If
know,
I- if
I
I'm
don't, I'm
being
not in the
honest-
business, right, so I don't know that you've got them then.
If I'm being honest,
Shooting off.
we normally get just client calls.
Hey, look, I think it was brilliant. The fact that he answered my call, he handled it very well. I'm just sad that he's ended up having to turn round to me and say, I can't speak to you anymore. Because
he's been getting
Because he should have just said to me, I'm really sorry, the information I gave you about someone being able to talk to you was incorrect, and, I apologise. I'm new, I'd got it wrong, I don't know.
The thing is, when you rang me, I had limited information about it, so I told you we can get back to you. And obviously, when I said to you, when I told my colleagues, this is the situation, that's when I've been told
Yeah.
that I cannot get back to you.
But the very minimal thing you could have done, because you did ask me to send through the information, right, is reply to the email to say, I'm really sorry, I've read your questions, I can't answer these because of whatever the legitimate reasons, and then close it, right?
You have to understand.
Yeah, it's the same one, or I
I'll
can
pass on.
send you
This is not my
my,
thing. I passed it on. And as I said, I
I'll
told
send
you, I
you
can
a
try to
number
help you as much
with
as I
our
can. If
supervisor.
you told me
Okay.
about the hotspot at the bus stop,
yeah, so they
I was
can
there
they can
myself on
contact
Friday
her
night.
and it'll be
and I even
difficult.
didn't tell the guys I'm gonna be there to make sure, to check if they're actually doing what
I'll
they're supposed to be
give
doing.
you,
And I was there, and I was there with them.
But I was out there as well. So what time were you out there? Because I
I
didn't
was
see
there
you.
since 10:30.
Oh, no, they didn't come
So the
back
guys
yet.
didn't see, the guys
So
were working
I can't say
for us, don't see
So there were 2 people working
There
that
were 4
night.
people. There were 4
No,
people at that bus
when I
stop.
went out, there was, I think it was a Thursday night actually, I think I'm wrong, I think it was a Thursday night, there was a male and a female out on Thursday night.
Alright, I'll send it.
and then
send
Friday
it
night,
to
obviously,
you.
it started
My name
again.
is Pura.
The only thing is,
Okay.
the only thing from my side, what I can do, if you
Yeah,
say
yeah,
to me,
that's
"Oh,
our
there's no
man,
guys at the
that's
bus
our
stop, it's getting
lead
really-
over there.
really
So
shit."
ask,
You can call me and I
ask
said,
all
I
the
can
staff
call
to
you guys,
contact
can you
her.
make sure you're at the bus stop?
and then
As soon as
she
you
can.
That's
Yeah.
the only thing I can do for you.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
That's the only thing I can do. The rest of it is up to you guys.
No, I mean, that's kind of you to say so. I think that back to the point that we don't know when you're meant to be there. We have no idea when you're meant to be there. We're told 10 till, I don't even know when until, but 10 is your start time. And then the rest we don't know. We have to fill in the gaps. We don't know if you come every half hour, every 2.5 hours. But all we know is it's still happening. So the only conclusion you can make is you're either there not at the times when it's really full on, or you're not there at all because you're in a different area, right?
Or probably we are not being asked for that. And
Well,
then
that's a
the
very
only
valid
answer-
point, but how do we know?
Then you have to ask them.
They won't tell us.
So here you go.
It's the same thing, it's
They
the
won't
same
tell us.
situation when it's one
They
thing
won't
for-
tell us, I'm sorry.
Because for say if they have asked us only to come for 2 days, I'm just giving you
Yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah.
Don't they
Oh, but I agree, this is the whole
like
crux
they
of the matter.
ask us to work 2 days, and then I don't know what's the otherwise agreement or what's the otherwise arrangement. Probably they are using their own staff or they've got other arrangements. So like if we are working 7 days and it's a published timing, we are going there 2 people or 5 or 20 people, whatever numbers they have asked for, whatever timings they have asked for, we are going according to that, and that's it.
Yeah.
We are doing our job.
So
Yeah.
that's why when you have
And we
complained,
don't
they
know
didn't
what
come
your
back to
job
us.
is, right? Because we don't, because nobody has been candid with us to tell us when you're meant to be there and what days you are meant to
because
be there.
that's the only person I think can answer is
Yeah.
the university.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
agree with you.
And then
All roads
they
lead
don't.
back to the university, I'm
Yeah.
afraid, and we
Oh,
know that.
okay,
So
yeah.
there you go.
Unfortunately, yes, they have the answers, but not.
Well, they're
us.
not willing to.
Well, here you go. Unfortunately, I think we have tried our best, and the answer is that you can only get answers, or should be getting answers from university
Yeah.
or council.
We know. I think this has just emphasised the fact that that's the case, right? Because maybe we were hoping in our naivety that, you know, Provide might be a bit open and say this is what we're meant to be doing and this is where we're patrolling, but given that you can't share that, then the university will still stand behind their flowery comments back to us.
Well, that's the way.
It's a shame though, isn't it, right? Why do that? Why not just be factual and say this is all we can afford? And only at these times, instead of saying it's working, do you think I would be here bothering you guys, ringing you up at midnight if it was working? Do you? I've got better things to do with my time. I've got a full-time job.
We get it, but we are answering the query and we don't have the answer.
No, we none of us know the
So
answer.
we will be definitely frustrated that why are we answering that?
You know what I mean? Like we only try to be helpful.
I've told
and
you
then
why,
Because then
because the University of Reading is pushing it all out and making the questions come back to people like you when it shouldn't be, because they fail to answer them themselves. And what do you do as a human being? You go in search of answers down different routes, don't you? It's natural human nature.
yeah.
It's not because you want to, but because if someone's pushing you to have to unravel this labyrinth of, you know, of not telling us the truth, then you seek alternate ways to find it. All right, well I shall leave you to get on with your rest of your afternoon. Me too. Do you know if how Clayton's doing? Is he still in hospital? Oh, okay. But it's not serious. I got an email saying from his sister that they didn't think it was going to be serious. It was just going to be in there for 4 weeks or something.
4 to 6 weeks, and that's when they can say something that
Right.
is guaranteed that he's out of it.
Yeah.
So
I saw him literally like not even maybe a week before that, and he said he was going to have something done to his nose. Was that what that is?
Yes, that's what it is.
Christ, that's terrible.
But it's the billing system. Doctors kept saying telling a different story. No one actually bothered to actually pay attention on anything. Who was responsible, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
So he ended up in hospital now. That's the answer.
I hope he gets well soon. All right, cool. Well, don't worry, I won't be ringing you again. But I appreciate you giving me time to talk about it. Like I said, it's not directed towards you. It's us just trying to get to the bottom of what seems to be a very messy situation. How do I